So, here I am. I've never considered myself as much of a fixer. Sure, I do a little woodworking on the side, hence the existence of a shed. But I'm more of a builder than a fixer, and I've never taken on anything with the size, scale, or mechanical complexity of an incubator. At some point, perhaps in a moment of foolhardiness or ego, I decided the most effective course of action would be to take all the parts out and reassemble the incubator from scratch. And of course, all the pieces inside became undone and refused to fit back in again. So I've concluded, fixing the incubator is beyond my skill level. The least my wife could have done was leave me with an instruction manual, or tell me how the hell she'd managed to break it to such an extent to begin with. But no, because, to quote her verbatim, fixing is a man's job. So, for the past few months, it's just been me, stuck in a shed, with an increasingly more broken incubator. But it didn't start that way. If one were to believe in fate's design, then the broken incubator began with a single doctor's appointment, June 12, 2023. I sat pensively in the sterile waiting room, my eyes trained on the brown wooden nameplate, Dr. Ann Meads, OBGYN. The best of the best, according to my wife. Impossible problems deserve impossibly good solutions. I nearly jumped out of my skin when the door abruptly swung open. "Please, join us." I took a seat next to my wife and cautiously surveyed her face. Her puffy red eyes and tear-streaked foundation told me all I needed to know. The doctor cleared her throat. "So, as I was just telling Maria, unfortunately there's nothing we can do. Medically, it's not. Her reproductive system is not." The doctor's eyes flickered between us hesitantly. "Hospitable for childbirth." Inhospitable. I've heard it countless times before. Your wife's body is inhospitable for growing a fetus. Countless appointments, countless waiting rooms, countless gynecologists later, and the answer was still the same. Inhospitable. There was no explanation, no details, no pathology given to me, thanks to my wife's persistent invocation of HIPAA. And yes, of course I'd respect my wife's privacy, but imagine how frustrating it is, forking over thousands of dollars just to hear the same expert opinion parroted at me again and again. Inhospitable. What a fucking medical mystery. "You're really not gonna give me IVF or even pills? It's just impossible?" My wife's voice was beginning to crack. "Please, we came here for you, for help. My husband, he can afford whatever treatment he can." "Take a break from trying," the doctor advised, her voice flat despite the sympathetic lilt. I wondered how many times she rehearsed a conversation exactly like this one. Perhaps a new hobby, a pet? Social interaction can be therapeutic. To my wife, those trivial parting words were sage prescriptions. First came the chickens, then a little garden for the chickens, complete with a pastel pink hutch, and then, of course, the incubator. "We needed to care for the chickens," my wife insisted. The first time I saw the 1.6 meter tall incubator standing awkwardly in a corner of the shed. Easy for her to say, when it was bought on my dime. My wife insisted that these new additions to the household would help her manifest a pregnancy. "It's good motherly energy," my wife would say. She thought it was all about the vibe. I thought she was fucking insane. But my wife seemed to thrive with her newfound toys. She would spend hours tending to the chickens or locked away in the shed of the incubator. Our new housekeeper Carolina, prescribed for social interactions, would tell my wife around the house, listening to her lengthy rants and helping her with the housework. The two seemed to be peas in a pod. With Carolina around, the mood in the house seemed to be lifted. And then the impossible happened. In October 2023, my wife got pregnant. But so did Carolina. The news of Carolina's pregnancy left me furious initially, as she'd breached her employment contract, but the more I thought about it, the more I found it peculiar. "It doesn't make sense," I said as I confronted them. "She's always home, and even when she's out with you. How the hell did she get pregnant?" "Immaculate conception," my wife explained, feverishly gesticulating out the Google Translate results on her phone. "¿Está claro, Carolina? Concepciado Inmaculada. Gift from God. All the feminine energy in the house has impregnated us both. Double for children. Oh, it's a double miracle." My wife refused to acknowledge any of my negativity. She seemed to truly believe that our Brazilian housekeeper was some sort of divine feminine talisman delivered personally to her by God himself. So overwhelming was her feminine prowess that had impregnated both her and my wife. From that day, it was all about Carolina. If my wife and her seemed close at first, they were now literally inseparable. Wherever my wife went, Carolina was no more than 2 steps behind. 2 pregnancies, 2 bellies, 2 sets of footsteps echoing down the halls. They went to birthing classes together, hired the same midwife, went to the same OBGYN. I bought matching baby supplies, all activities I was now excluded from. Appointments, meetings, or classes seemed to get scheduled at the worst times, on my busiest work weeks or when I was on work trips, and those appointments I could make it to, well, they'd get serendipitously cancelled last minute and rescheduled to some other day I couldn't make it for. It was like I was being replaced in my own marriage. After months of being treated like an outsider, I finally cracked. We were almost at the 9-month mark and I hadn't been to a single doctor's appointment with my wife. All I wanted was to make sure my wife and baby were safe. Surely that's not unreasonable. So, on my lunch break, I gave my wife's doctor a ring and blurted out a series of questions about the baby. When my wife's due date was, how the appointments had been going, what could I do to prepare for the baby's arrival? I paused to take a breath. There was a silence on the line. The doctor breathed in deeply.
"Are you sure she's pregnant?" Yeah, of course. She's been like that for months. Wait, haven't you been seeing her? She's been going to you for checkups, no?"
I fumbled over my words, confused. Another pause on the line.
I shouldn't be saying this, but I believe there's cause to be concerned for her safety." "What? Is she okay? Would the baby be okay?" "Maria can't have a baby. She had a radical hysterectomy 15 years ago."
I took the journey home in silence, foot jammed on the accelerator, my knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel. I swerved into the driveway and stumbled out of the car, then stopped short. There she was, my wife, standing serenely on the front porch, rocking a little white bundle in her arms. She was draped in white, the post-birth clothes she'd shown me, a haunting, calm visage. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something fell off. "You're early." It's here?" I struggled to catch my breath. She gazed lovingly at the baby in her arms. "Adorable, isn't he?" "But how? How is this possible? You can't. You really shouldn't go around calling people and spreading lies. Left me quite a mess to clean up." She finally looked up from rocking the baby, her steely gaze now bearing into my soul. "He's got your eyes, you know." "I don't understand. That's not my kid. You can't get pregnant." She rolled her eyes. "Sure, I can. As it turns out though, there's a lot a turkey baster can do. Surely you don't actually believe the immaculate conception bullshit I spun." "Carolina," I breathed, with sudden clarity. That's what was missing. My wife paused mid-rock. "Where's Carolina?" Ever since the double pregnancy, Carolina hadn't left my wife's side for a second. She was her companion, lapdog, shadow. The space around my wife seemed so uncharacteristically empty. My wife pressed her lips together in a smirk. In the back. I took off sprinting around the side of the house towards the backyard, white-hot panic seizing in my brain. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. I frantically glanced around the yard. The grass had seen a recent disturbance. Entire patches were matted. Fresh claw marks marred the earth. You could almost trace the paths of footprints across the yard, heavy and stumbling. Almost see where someone might have fallen, wrestled, rolled around, where they dug in their heels, where they tried to crawl away. From somewhere in the distance came the muffled hum of vinyl on the old Victorol record player. The trees and shrubs hung limp and still, with a slickness, a wetness, a weight that wasn't there before. The wicked summer heat rolled beads of sweat down my back. The air hung thick with humidity and sickly sweet metallic scent. It wasn't dew, nor the typical stickiness of summertime. No. The smell, the music, they were coming from the shed. The music hit its crescendo as I flung the shed doors open. My eyes glazed over for a second. All I saw was red. Blood, fresh and sticky and sopping, spattered on the ceiling, on the windows, on the walls, soaked into the wooden frame, trickling out the shed and onto the grass. On the work table lay blood-stained tools, a box cutter, a circular saw, a kitchen knife, a hammer, a clamp. Along the serrated edge of a saw there were still visible clumps of tissue and flesh, but most of the flesh, flaps of skin, and unrecognizable hacked-off bits of innards lay on the floor, swimming in pools of blood. Mystery meat in cranberry sauce. And in the corner of the shed, propped against a wall in a crumpled mess of a body and clumps of matted, dark brown hair sticking out from under the wooden plank, Carolina's in the same corner of the shed as on the first day I met her, just that this time there was a lot less of her in her. I wanted to scream, but nothing comes out. Labor was hard on her. My wife appeared behind me. Her organs are on the fucking floor, Maria, I hissed. That's not labor. Well, my wife smiled brightly. I don't see a problem with that. What the fuck is wrong with you? People are gonna ask about her. The agency, the neighbors. Where's our housekeeper? What happened to Carolina? How are we going to answer them? I started to panic as the full weight of reality began to dawn on me. My wife cocked her head to the side, eyes wide with feigned innocence. What housekeeper? I don't remember a housekeeper. See? It's easy. Oh my God, I mumbled, resisting the urge to puke. There's so much blood. We can't just leave her here. She served her purpose. My wife sighed and shrugged nonchalantly. And I did the hard part. You didn't do shit, so now you can clean up the mess. Oh great. All this just for a kid? I spat. Our kid, Clyde. Our kid. And I'd appreciate if you didn't curse in front of Georgie. Maria flipped on her heels and strode back into the house. I turned back to Carolina. The record player crackled and popped. The body twitched slightly. Fucking rigor mortis. I vomited all over the shed floor. There's a funny thing that happens when things unravel. Try as you might to slide it all back into place. It never quite fits the same way it used to. Maybe that's why people rarely opt to reassemble dead bodies for disposal. So I don't know why I keep trying. The cleaning was the easy part, but long after the blood had washed off the walls and all the scattered debris had been collected, it still lies there, on its side, fully ajar, sitting in the freezer box in the shed. It is missing some pieces, but has far too many to stuff back into a shell. I try and I try, but the pieces seem to have a life of their own. They only seem to multiply and expand with time, and just refuse to fucking fit back in. I feel like I'm losing my mind. My wife says if we don't call the problem by its name, it will go away. So with that in mind, is anybody in the market for a broken incubator?